Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Sorry, guys. How is it going? Is everyone all right? Okay, I had to come and hide from the kids so we can do this program today. Okay, as usual, let's allow people to join in first, and then we can start the constitutional review, the Constitution of the Republic of the Gambia. So give me a second. Let me allow people to join in. You guys give me a second, please. Just stay, hold on, hold it. I'll come to the draft constitution shortly. Book a flight or lock a hotel deal. How's everyone doing? Are you all good? All right. Thank you for tuning in today. Okay, so we're going to talk about Gambia's draft constitution today. That's the topic. The government of Adama Barrow has brought back the constitution of 2020, which was drafted by the Constitutional Review Commission. The Constitutional Review Commission spent 2 to 3 years compiling the draft constitution, which was put before Parliament in 2020, year 2020, but it didn't pass the test of Parliament. And I want us to discuss that constitution today, the draft constitution of 2020. So, what happened this time? Instead of going through a constitutional review commission again, the Adama Barrow government decided that they were going to take the illegal route of putting the draft constitution before the cabinet of Adama Barrow, so that they can look at what they want in the draft constitution on 2020 and what they do not want in the draft constitution of 2020, and then add or remove those sections. So the draft is just being gazetted so that everybody can read it. Everybody's aware that the government of Adama Barrow is about to bring about this constitution. The draft is simply a 2020 draft. But what the government of Adama Barrow did, his cabinet did, was they went through the draft of year 2020, which was compiled by the Constitutional Review Commission. Adama Barrow's cabinet decided at their own whims and caprices that they were going to add or remove the sections that suited them and sections that didn't suit them, they would amend or remove from the constitution completely, a process that is totally illegal. Because when you task a group of people, a nation, or whoever they are to compile a constitution or to amend it or to review it, there's a process by which constitutions will be reviewed, revised, amended, repealed. Adam Barrow and his government, knowing fully well that the 2020 draft constitution cannot be brought back to parliament in its 2020 format, they needed to amend it, and the amendments had to be significant enough for the same document to be presented before the National Assembly of the Gambia. So what Barrow government did was they didn't go back to the Constitutional Review Commission or constitute another Constitutional Review Commission. They sat down as a cabinet and decided that they were going to basically remove from the draft of 2020 what they didn't want and add to the draft of 2020 what they wanted to see happen in the Gambia. And what the government of Adama Barrow did was they added sections that had nothing to do with Gambia's interest. They added sections that would suit Adama Barrow himself in terms of him uh, perpetuating his rule as the president of the Gambia, and in terms of his desire to um, to in terms of his desire to violate the fundamental rights of Gambian citizens, in terms of his desire to stay longer in power, in terms of his desire between him, Barrow, and his cabinet ministers to become more and more corrupt, more than what they're doing right now, without being subject to any accountability. So what they did was they didn't do anything extraordinary. The changes are significant, but the changes are the most selfish piece of document I've ever seen written for a nation. The draft of 2024, the draft constitution 2024, which Adama Barrow and his people want to present before our National Assembly, is the most worthless piece of paper that will be put before our National Assembly and possibly before the public for them to vote. All right, if it passes the National Assembly, which I doubt it would, because as it is now, it is an absolutely piece of junk. I can tell you that now. I'll go into it in detail shortly. This whole program is going to be talking about, not the whole program, most of this program is dedicated to the Daft Constitution presented by a daft government, which has been run by somebody who is totally clueless, somebody who is totally selfish, somebody who is totally unpatriotic. And this has become clear to all Gambian citizens by now. We all know that Adama Barrow is not the real deal. He's not going to bring about any meaningful change to the Republic of the Gambia. I don't think there's any debate in that respect. But the same Adama Barrow who is clueless, totally out of sorts, doesn't even know his left hand from his right hand, wishes to continue in power for another 10 years if the draft that he's going to present in Parliament, if it passes Parliament and is approved by Parliament, if it passes the referendum and it's been voted in by the Gambian public, Adama Barrow's desire is to go another 10 years after 2026. And he thinks Gambian people are going to give him that constitutional mandate to go for an additional 10 years, to make him a president for 20 solid years. And under the current trajectory, under the current direction that the Gambia is taking, imagine another 12, 13 years of Adama Barrow. Just imagine that. Think about that. Even if you're an NPP supporter, you're an Adama Barrow supporter, think about Gambia's current difficulty, the direction that Gambia is going now for another 10, 12, 15 years of Adama Barrow. Just imagine that. But that's what Adama Barrow wants to do. Totally wants to, basically, he's turning the current draft constitution, if it passes, Adama Barrow's government is going to be a totalitarian government, completely devoid of anything that will be in the interest of the Republic of the Gambia. Because most of the sections of the constitution that they amended the sections that they removed are sections that give Gambians the power to live in a decent state. Now, they criticized the constitution of the Gambia 1997, and they said that constitution is a President Jammeh constitution. It's a constitution that supported dictatorship. It's a constitution that was built for one man. But the 1997 constitution, for all its criticism, and most of the criticism it received is totally unfair, because I think 1997 constitution is one of the best written pieces of constitution in the sub-region. It might have undergone several changes, several amendments over the years. That's possible. All right. It might have done that. Those amendments might have affected it somehow in some places. So uh, that is possibly the reason why people criticize the constitution. There were amendments in there that people didn't like. There were conducts of our security services that people didn't like. So all that is possible. But the document of 1997, the Constitution of the Republic of the Gambia 1997, is a solid piece of paperwork that had Gambia's interests at heart, that protected Gambians absolutely. Now, you have a constitution. The constitution doesn't tell the National Intelligence Agency, the NIA, go and arrest somebody, keep him for longer than 72 hours. The constitution doesn't tell the police officers, go and arrest somebody, keep him in detention for 7 hours, 80 hours, 100 hours. That's not the job of the constitution. The constitution has clearly stated in the 1997 document that a government citizen cannot be detained for longer than 72 hours without charges or without being released. You have to do two or three things. If you arrest somebody and you want to keep them longer than 72 hours, you charge them. If you're not going to charge them, you release them. If you're not going to release them, but you want to continue to detain them, you go to court and apply for an extension to detain the person. And you have to have very good reasons as to why you want to keep somebody longer than 72 hours. You've had 72 hours. You had the opportunity to investigate. You had the opportunity to charge the person. Before you even arrest somebody, you would have obtained adequate information to inform the person when you pick them up from their houses and take them to a safe and secure location as to why you're arresting them, what information you have before you to arrest them in the first place. So therefore, keeping them for another 72 hours is just a means of keeping that person away from their freedom. You're forfeiting that person's freedom. Yes, sometimes when you arrest somebody, new information comes to light. Sometimes the idea of arresting somebody and detaining somebody makes them confess to some of the alleged crimes. Sometimes they might not confess to it, but they might give you some other clues that will assist your investigation into the person's conduct or whatever allegations were leveled against that person. That detention might bring about new leads or new information which you can rely on to charge the person or to release the person, or you can go to court and extend the person's detention pending certain inquiries or certain investigations. And the courts have to weigh up the evidence, because somebody losing their freedom is a major issue in a nation, in a person's life. In fact, in the United Kingdom, there's a saying that uh, if somebody is detained, all right, if somebody is detained in this country, the government has to ensure their case is dealt with as a matter of priority. You have to ensure that anybody who's in detention has their case right at the front of the queue. No matter how busy the police are, those on bail and those who haven't been arrested, their matters will be pushed back at the back of the queue to allow the person who's in detention's matter to be investigated very quickly, so that that person's freedom can be restored. They can be freed to go home, and if you have to charge them, you have to charge them. All right, and there's also a saying in the law fraternity, the law industry, law career, that the state would rather free 100 guilty people or suspected guilty people than jail one person who is innocent. One innocent person spending time behind bars is more serious than 100 people who've been let go, who might have committed a crime, who were suspects. They'll rather let those people go than jail one innocent person. So therefore, detention, jailing somebody, sentencing somebody to jail is a serious matter in law. No nation should use that tactic of detaining people over a weekend, because that's what the government of Adama Barrow does. They've got all week to go and arrest you. They wait until Friday morning or Friday afternoon or Friday evening to arrest you when they know that probably the courts will not be open on a Saturday and Sunday, and then they can detain you on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and release you on Monday when the courts are open. Why can't they arrest you on a Monday or a Tuesday or Wednesday and put you before the court the next day and charge you, or uh, free you? You can go about your business if you haven't committed any crime. But I don't want to go into criminal law too much. Today is about public administration, public law. All right, the Constitution of the Republic of the Gambia. We're going to talk about the draft Constitution of 2020, which has been taken by the Cabinet of Adam Barrow, not a Constitutional Review Commission, not an appointed committee of lawyers or draftsmen who can sit and look at the 2020 Constitution and revise it for the benefit of the public. A constitution is a public document, it's an administrative document which looks after the interest of the nation, the interest of everybody. It's not a document that looks after the interests of just the president and his cronies. What Adama Barrow's cabinet did is the illegality of using the cabinet to go back to the draft constitution of 2020 and amending it to the benefit of Adama Barrow and his gang. They didn't put anything in there that was in the interest of the nation. They didn't put anything in there that will safeguard the fundamental freedoms. The same freedoms they said weren't available during President Jammeh's time. Now the government of Adama Barrow is doing exactly that and even worse, because before President Jammeh's accountability, some of the accountability clauses, some of the ethical clauses, some of the provisions that were in the Constitution 1997 that protected the public purse, protected several other things, have been removed from the draft of 2024. So there are three documents here, and I don't want us to confuse them. We have the 1997 Constitution of the Gambia, which is the current Constitution of the Republic of the Gambia. I am breaking this down for the benefit of my followers who are not Gambian citizens. There might be people from ECOWAS watching or listening. There might be people from African Union watching or listening. I am breaking this down so that they can understand before I start opening the draft constitution of 2024 and all the proposed changes that have been instituted or that have been suggested in that draft to go before the National Assembly of the Republic of the Gambia. All right. So now there are three documents. The 1997 Constitution of the Republic of the Gambia will become relevant here. The draft Constitution of 2020 will become relevant here. And now we have got the draft Constitution of 2024, which is the one we're going to discuss today, the draft Constitution of 2024. But it has some relations with the draft Constitution of 2020. It has some relations with the existing Constitution of 1997. So if you'll give me a minute, I'll open the draft Constitution 2024 so that we can go through it provision by provision. I'll give you an idea of what my observations are, what I think the Barrow government is trying to achieve. As I mentioned before, in my law course, the substantive law course, and the legal practice course, there's a saying that laws get passed for various reasons. And in the process of passing a law, there are three motivations people have to look at when a law is being passed or the constitution is going to be passed. What is the golden rule? What is the mischief rule? What's the literal rule? All right. I will look at all of those, and I'm looking at the constitution from the eye of an average Gambian. I'm not looking at it as an opposition figure or a figure from the government, and I'm not looking at it from the partisan viewpoint. I'm looking at it as an average Gambian whose rights and privileges and other uh, interest in public administration will be severely impacted by this constitution that the government of Adam Barrow wants to pass. So now let me get my my draft constitution open so we can go through it provision by provision. All right. You then begin to realize the criminality of the government of Adama Barrow. All right. So you guys give me a second. Let me open it. What is it? Okay. Sorry. So this is the draft constitution. The draft constitution 2024. What is it? Bear with me, please. Let me open it. Okay. The Constitutional Review Commission of 2020 presented the draft in 2020, which didn't pass parliamentary readings. Parliament frustrated the Constitution at the time, and I was in support of what Parliament did to the Constitution at the time. All right, I was very much in support of it because I thought that the Constitution wasn't ready for the Gambian population. All right, so let me open the draft here so we can go through it. I will jump straight to where they made the amendments, all right? I'll jump straight to where they made the amendments. And there are lots and lots of amendments here. The most important thing out of this draft constitution is our fundamental rights. And those are the ones that Adama Barrow and his government want to restrict, our fundamental rights. So those are the ones I'll spend a lot of time on because it could be you, it could be me, it could be somebody else who will be detained by the government of Adama Barrow, whose education will be impacted by the government of Adama Barrow, whose freedom of movement, freedom of assembly, free media, freedom of association will be impacted by the government of Adama Barrow. Freedom to education, freedom to health, and every single thing. And then we can also go to sections where Adama Barrow really want to stay in power regardless of the circumstances affecting Gambian people, regardless of his poor performance, regardless of anything, no concerns of him. Now, I don't want us to waste our time talking about Adama Barrow should not go for a third term, should not go for a fourth term, because those are not illegalities. Let's concentrate on matters that are illegal or matters that we think will be illegal if we pass the draft constitution. All right? So Adama Barrow is allowed to go for 50 terms if Gambian people vote for it. That's not an argument. We don't have an argument there. As you heard Usainu Dabo say before, nobody gets elected based on morals. So morality is important in a politician, but we know many politicians don't care about morality. So the moral that Adama Barrow wishes to go beyond 2 terms is wrong. We want presidents to stay for nothing longer than 2 terms. All right. But if the Constitution allows a president to go beyond 2 terms, and that president is performing, is delivering in government very well, and they need to go for a third term and a fourth term, and Gambian people are voting for them, so be it. That's what our Constitution allows right now. It doesn't say a president has to leave after 2 terms. It doesn't say that. But when a president is failing miserably, like Adama Barrow and his cronies, I can't understand why he would want to go for a third term. But most worrying of all of this is I can't understand why any Gambian citizen would allow Adama Barrow's government to go for another term, 2 terms, on top of what they're doing now. Adama Barrow to stay in power for 20 years. Now, if Barrow wants to stay in power for 20 years, fair enough. That's his personal ambition. That's his selfish ambition. He's not seeing Gambia in all of this. Adama Barrow just wants to stay in power for the sake of it. But most worrying of all of this is why Gambian people would think that it's a good idea to give Adama Barrow another mandate or a mandate to stay in power for another 10 years after 2026. Why should we vote for Adama Barrow in 2026? Adama Barrow hasn't made a case for us to vote for him. He shouldn't have won in 2021. We know he didn't win in 2021. He wants to go to 2026 again and probably repeat the same fraud that his government did by buying votes, by breaching, contravening the elections decree 1996 repeatedly, openly on video, in audio, and everything. And when we take him to the Supreme Court will frustrate our election petition because one provision out of 3 in terms of submitting documentation, a petition to the interested parties, was not fulfilled. The same law courts, the same judiciary that changed the rule book in a case that came soon after the presidential elections of 2021. Gambia's judiciary changed it. There was a case at the High Court where the submission procedure for a case to be heard in court was not fulfilled by the police. 3 criteria were set. The police fulfilled 2, didn't fulfill the 3rd one. But the High Court said that case was in public interest. It's in public's interest that that case went ahead anyway, even though the 3rd means of submission by the police was not fulfilled. What is more of public interest than elections and electing a president of a nation? Is there anything more of a public interest than an election petition which challenged open, blatant election rigging, blatant violations of the election decree 1996? What's there in a nation that's public interest is greater than that of a president's election win being challenged at the Supreme Court? Well, we know what was going on. We know what's going on. We know what Adam Barrow's intentions are. Those are the things we are trying to challenge right now, brothers and sisters. But Adam Barrow is paving the way for another term of his. He's paving the way for another rigged election in 2026. And we are watching. We're fighting between ourselves as opposition figures. We cannot unite the opposition because everybody fancies himself. Everybody's got their personal interest. Everybody doesn't like the other person. So our opposition in the Gambia is based on, okay, I don't like that person, so therefore I'd rather Adama Barrow stay there. All right? Anyway, I don't want to go off track, so let me go straight away to the draft constitution. I'll go straight to fundamental rights because for me, that's the most important part of this draft constitution, the fundamental rights. In fact, this edited version, 2024 draft, is so childish in parts of it. There's so many typing errors, so many schoolboy errors in this draft. It's almost unbelievable. I don't know who in the cabinet was given the responsibility to put these amendments in the draft, who's supposed to rewrite this draft, whether they sat down and did it jointly or they appointed an individual to make these amendments. I don't understand. But whatever they've done here is utterly ridiculous. It's almost like this is like schoolboy exercise they've done to the draft constitution of 2020. All right. So give me a second. Let me go to the first one, the Republic of the Gambia. Okay, so as my YouTube title of this YouTube live video says, the Daft Constitution of the Gambia. I didn't say the draft. I called it the Daft Constitution of the Gambia from a daft government. And these people seem to think that Gambian people are stupid. All right, so chapter 1 of the Draft Constitution 2024 says the Republic of the Gambia. So no problems with chapter 1 apart from some amendments. They're fine. There are so many typing errors in there, grammatical errors in this draft constitution of 2024. The territory of the Gambia, that's fine. National symbols, that's fine. I don't want to waste my time on those. Maybe I should just skip the fundamental freedoms. So decentralization of the government, this is important. You all know that Adama Barrow is having beef with leaders of local authorities in the Gambia, local government. Adama Barrow had beef with Rohim Malik Low. Adama Barrow had beef with Talib Bensouda. Adama Barrow had beef with Yankuba Dabo. Adama Barrow had beef with almost all other administrators except those who are administering now in the name of the NPP across the country. All right. So now what he's trying to do is take the power away from local authorities. That's what Adam Barrow is doing. When I say local authority, I'm talking about local government, like the Brikama Area Council, Kanifi Municipal Council, Banjul City Council, Lower River Region, North Bank Region, CRR South, CRR North, and Basse. So what the government of Adam Barrow wants to do is usurp power, take power from the local government. The decentralization that was there, what was instituted by the government of President Jammeh, the 1997 Constitution, which gives local authorities some autonomy. All right. This draft constitution of 2020 wants to take that power away from local authorities. So what Adama Barrow wants to do is centralize power so that he can abuse our resources, so that he can abuse our region, so that he can manipulate the people to be able to entrench himself for another 12 years, 13 years, 15 years in power. All right? That's what Adama Barrow is intending to do, because right now, he wants to make sure the local government authorities bow down to him or fold. That's what Adama Barrow is trying to do. He wants the local governments to bow down to him or he'll fold them. That's what he's trying to do by removing this decentralization of the government and taking away powers from the local authority. All right? Why does Adama Barrow want to centralize power when the modern trend is decentralization, autonomy given to local governments, autonomy given to the regions? What is Adama Barrow's interest in centralizing power again, as it used to be before 1997? Why does he want to centralize power? Well, this is how it goes. Adama Barrow wants to centralize power so that he can use the government machinery, local government funds, just like he's doing now. He just wants to replicate the executive treachery that he's engaged in right now. He wants to engage in the tomfoolery that's taking place in the executive. He wants to replicate that and amplify it. That's his intention. He wants to go to local government, take hold of the budget of the local government and the machinery of the local government so that he can go and manipulate the local communities in and around the country to the benefit of his entrenchment. That's his intention. All right? That's why he wants to take the power away from local government. He can then go to those local authorities across the country and tell people to vote for him, to follow NPP. Otherwise, no government agenda or developments or government initiatives will come to those regions. Exactly the same thing that Adama Barrow is doing to the Fonyi region right now. No government initiative from the government of Adama Barrow is going to Fonyi, from Bullock to Kalaji. Everything bypasses Fonyi. The only thing that Fonyi will benefit from under the government of Adama Barrow is basically militarization of Fonyi, brutalizing Fonyi, shooting and killing the citizens of Fonyi, displacing the citizens of Fonyi. That's the only thing the government of Adama Barrow is interested in. Because they're not voting for him, because we're not following NPP, he deprives Fonyi of every single opportunity that was meant for the region. All right? So that's the same thing he wants to practice in every other region that doesn't vote for him or support him. If he takes away power from Yankuba Dabo, that 400,000 dollars that went to every ward in West Coast region wouldn't have gone to every Fonyi ward or constituency in Fonyi. So therefore, that's the matter that Adama Barrow and his cabinet and his cronies have set their eyes on. All right? They want to go and take hold of local government and its budget and machinery and manipulate local politics to a point where if you don't support NPP, you don't support Adama Barrow, no development goes to your area. So almost all the wards in West Coast region benefit from a grant from the West Coast region Central Committee or from the Financial Committee of West Coast region. All wards were given about $400,000 to go and implement certain projects in their wards, something that wouldn't have been there. If Adama Barrow succeeds in centralizing power again, taking all that power from local authorities, wards in Funya would not have benefited from such an incentive or from such an initiative that the West Coast region did in Funya and other wards in West Coast region of the Gambia, WCR. That's why he wants to centralize power. But let me go back to the draft constitution. The Gambia is divided into 7 administrative areas as outlined in Schedule 2. It used to be Schedule 1, but because they removed some provisions from the draft constitution 2024, so everything is moved down in terms of numbers, or it's moved up because they added certain things that they shouldn't have added. So now, the Gambia is divided into 7 administrative areas as outlined in Schedule 2. All right, what are the 7 administrative areas? So you have Banjul, KMC, West Coast region, Lower River region, North Bank region, CRR South, CRR North, and URR. But I guess maybe Banjul is not part of it. Maybe CRR is added as one region, all right, to make it 7. Okay, so 7 administrative areas. The executive shall ensure reasonable access to its services in all parts of the Gambia. Fine. Local government. So those areas are common sense. The executive and local government shall cooperate and work with each other to promote the interest of the Gambia. Okay. So that's what he says here. But we'll get to a point where the local government's powers are on the verge of being seized. I think this draft is not going to go anywhere. It's going to fail anyway. All right, this draft constitution is going to fail miserably because I can't see how this will survive Parliament. Okay, because Parliament has to vote, I think it's a 2/3 majority or 3/4 majority to be able to push this draft before a referendum. When it goes to a referendum, 75% of voters have to vote in favor. 75% or more have to vote in favor of this draft. It will die in Parliament, or before it gets to Parliament, or before it gets to a referendum. I believe that 100%. And that's why we're here to discuss it, so that Gambian people can make an informed choice as to whether they want to give Adama Barrow another 10 years in power under the current trajectory, under the current path to doom that we're facing. All right? National days, those areas are not very significant. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Okay, I'll jump these ones. Defense of the Constitution, they're not very, they're not huge sections in terms of the amendments they've made. All right. Let me go to the fundamental rights, as I said. Those are the most important parts. Okay. So chapter 3, national values and principles, not a big deal. Culture, not a big deal. Duties of citizens, not a big deal, not much change there. Chapter 4, citizenship, not a lot of changes there. Citizenship by birth and descent, yeah, I agree with that. So the citizenship laws, I agree with them predominantly. Citizenship by registration, fair. Citizenship by naturalization, and how you can lose your citizenship, deprivation of citizenship. Those sections are all right. I'll go to the fundamental restoration of citizenship, fair. Interpretation of this constitution is fair. Okay, chapter 5. The government of Adama Barrow totally removed chapter 5. I don't know why. And chapter 5 is talking about leadership and integrity. So therefore, everything that the draft constitution 2020 wrote in terms of chapter 5, Adama Barrow has removed, because chapter 5 has got a lot to do with accountability. It's got a lot to do with the president and the public officials doing what they said they will do. Adama Barrow is not interested in that. Barrow said you can go and tell people lies, basically, when you're on tour. You can tell people what you want, even if you don't mean to do that. That's what Adama Barrow said. All right? I'm not making this up. He said, when you're on a tour or national rally or anything like that, you can tell people what you want to tell them. Even if you know you're not going to implement it, tell them anyway. That's what he said. So why did he remove chapter 4, which is leadership and integrity? Well, he removed it because this section is talking about Adama Barrow himself upholding his manifesto, upholding his promises, meaning what he says. He has to say what he means. His ministers the same. All right. In terms of gratuity, the gifts that get given to Adama Barrow and the government and others is covered by chapter 5. So nobody can turn up and give National Assembly members 58 vehicles and say, oh, I am an anonymous philanthropist. No, you can't do that. This chapter is there to protect the integrity of everyone involved in public administration. So if I take 57 vehicles to the Gambia today and I want to give them to the National Assembly members, I have to have a good reason why I want to give them those vehicles. And those vehicles will be given to the Anti-Corruption Commission so that the Anti-Corruption Commission can decide whether it's appropriate to give it to National Assembly elections or what's the best way to distribute these vehicles, or to have an oversight function to look at whether some of the gifts coming into the government are appropriate in a democratic dispensation or they're inappropriate. All right, because some people will give you stuff, some investors will give you stuff, some players will give you stuff, some foreign agents will give you stuff because they want to lay their hands on something. There's an end game, there's a motive. They want to obtain something from the nation. They might give you a vehicle because they want a Gambian diplomatic passport. They want to give you a vehicle because they want you to pass a law that is against the interests of the Gambia and against the interests of the public, but for the benefit of that company, of the person who gave you a vehicle. That's how they lobby sometimes. And if you're corrupt, you take a vehicle, several of you will take money probably, and then you go and enact a law that's against the interests of the majority of Gambian citizens. That's how it works. So this chapter 5 was supposed to safeguard us, safeguard the nation against issues of that nature. Integrity. Are you clean? Are you honest? Are you truthful? Are you going to say what you mean? Are you going to mean what you say? This section is for that purpose. All right. So it says, I'll read the first section of chapter 5, which Adama Barrow's government removed. All right. It's got 1, 2, 3. So let me read the 3 points anyway, word for word, and you'll know why Adama Barrow removed it, because Adama Barrow is today presiding over the most corrupt government in Gambia's history. Yes, the most corrupt government in Gambia's history. They've taken loans of about $115 billion, but we can't see the evidence of where all of that money went. All we see is government ministers embezzling funds, government ministers are engaged in personal projects, but the nation itself is disintegrating into chaos. All right. So the first section, application of this chapter and guiding principles. Chapter 5, they removed chapter 5 completely from the draft constitution of 2020. In the draft constitution of 2024, chapter 5 is not there because it doesn't suit Adama Barrow. It's good for the Gambia, but it's not good for Adama Barrow and his NPP government. So look at this. This is why I cannot understand. Sometimes I question why anyone would contemplate giving Adama Barrow another 5 years, but not Adama Barrow and NPP. Adama Barrow and NPP, Adama Barrow and his cabinet saw that. They removed it so that it can benefit, the removal will benefit Adama Barrow and his cabinet, but the removal will not benefit the Gambian population. All right? That's why they removed it. So it says, application of this chapter and guiding principles. Chapter 5 applies to every office and office holder and every authority, both public and private, and to every citizen or other person who has or is given, whether on contract or otherwise, a functional role or responsibility in relation to a duty that is in public interest. Subsection 2 or subsection 2 of chapter 5, yeah? Chapter 5, section 23, subsection 2 says, the chapter is to be read as complementing the objects and guiding principles outlined in the various chapters of the Constitution. And compliance with those objects and principles shall not in any way preclude the application of this chapter to a public officer or authority or any other person who has a responsibility to the state, the citizens of the Gambia, or the government in a matter of public interest. Subsection 3. For the purposes of this chapter, a reference to a public office or public officer shall, as the context requires, be considered to include every office in the service of the state, the citizens of the Gambia, and every person who is elected or appointed to such office, irrespective of how the office or election or appointment to the office is described or designated. That's why Chapter 5 was there. Yeah? Chapter 5 wants to protect the Gambia. But Adama Barrow and his people saw that it's not in their interest. That's why they set out to remove Chapter 5 from the draft constitution of 2024. So this draft, the 2020 draft, had this Chapter 5 to protect the Gambia. The 2024 draft removed Chapter 5 not to protect the Gambia. All right? That's what the government of Adama Barrow did. They removed it completely. So what did Chapter 5 actually want to do? So it says, Section 24, subsection 1, cognizant of the fact that all sovereign authority emanates from the people. Any authority, duty, or responsibility conferred or assigned to a public officer, whether under the Constitution, an act of the National Assembly, or any law, a privilege and public trust which must be exercised in a matter that I is consistent with the purpose of objects of the Constitution, demonstrates respect for the people and the rule of law, brings honor to the nation and dignity to the office, and promotes public confidence and respect in the integrity of the office. Adama Barrow doesn't want that. Adama Barrow said, Adama Barrow bugut lendem, na leer, na leer. Adama Barrow doesn't like darkness, Let it be clear, let it be clear. That's the NPP slogan of 2021. I think they abandoned that slogan. They ditched it. They are no longer interested in accountability or clearing matters. They removed Chapter 5 because they want darkness to descend on the Gambian populace. That's all they did. Chapter 5 is not in the interest of clearing matters. It's not in the interest of the government of Adama Barrow. Chapter 5 is there to protect Gambian people, to clear matters, but they removed it because they're not interested in clearing matters. They're not interested in accountability. That's the government of Adama Barrow. That's why they removed Chapter 5, because it's talking about how public officials have to be honest, they have to have integrity, they have to work in the interest of the Gambia. Yet Barrow, since he came to power, has not been operating in the interest of the Gambia. Adama Barrow has been installed for the purpose of foreign agents. Those are the ones benefiting from all of Gambia's sovereign wealth right now. And that's the problem we have with this draft constitution. It should not survive parliament, and it should never ever get to a referendum. But we're here to ensure, if it does survive the National Assembly, that the public should kick this draft constitution out, reject it totally. When it goes to a referendum, we will ensure there is total annihilation of this draft constitution. All right? Because what Adama Barrow did, he's a copycat of Macky Sall. Macky Sall passed the 2-term limit in Senegal. But the 2-term limit, when it was passed in Senegal, was supposed to include the term that Macky Sall was serving at the time, which meant that when Macky Sall won the election in 2019, that would have been his last term in office. All right? Because Macky Sall passed the term limits back in 2013, 2012, 2013, or thereabouts, before the election of 2019. So he knew clearly that if he won the election in 2019, that would have been his last term in office. But he wanted to abrogate the Constitution of Senegal. He wanted to amend it to his benefit, personal benefit. Exactly the same thing that Adama Barrow is trying now. He knows passing the 2-term limit and counting his current term would mean if he wins the 2026 election, that would be his last term. No, Adama Barrow is not interested in that at all. He's interested in the Constitution stating that his current term doesn't count. So therefore, if we criminally allow Adama Barrow to proceed as the Gambian president in 2026, he will have another 10 years. He will also have the power to manipulate the local governments as he wishes. Because if this draft succeeds, he would have taken the absolute power from local authority. He would have absolute power, totalitarian rule, where he can dictate, he can manipulate local communities. If any community doesn't bow down to him, if any community doesn't support Adama Barrow and the NPP government, that community will not benefit from government services. That community will have very little initiatives, positive initiatives from the government of Adama Barrow. Some communities like Fonyi are already benefiting from that, to a point where the government of Adama Barrow actually wanted to go to Kanilai and steal the water tank that was serving the communities around Kanilai and Fonyi Kansala. Instead of reconnecting it to serve the people in that locality, they wanted to go and steal that water tank and take it somewhere. The lies they spewed before the Gambian population is that that water tank was needed to restore the water supply failures at the Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital, Gambia's one and only main referral hospital. Those were the lies they spewed before us. But we know for a fact that the hospital itself had a water supply upgrade last year. They had about 10 to 12 water tanks, no, about 5 to 10 new water tanks installed at Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital. There shouldn't be any water shortages at the hospital. They also have a major water reserve tank at Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital. That tank apparently is faulty, it had a leak. So you think the simplest solution to a leaking tank is to empty it, weld it, bring it back to full working capacity and refill it. No, they didn't want to do that. That's why we didn't buy their story that the tank in Canela, which is 600,000 liters, that could supply the whole of Fonyi and Kiang with clean and reliable drinking water, pipe-borne water. They wanted to steal that tank and take it to somebody's individual use. Just the same thing they did. They took the generators from Kanilai that were powering President Jammeh's farm and the village and took them to elsewhere. They stole them at the time. But at that time, stealing was convenient because it was coalition 2016. None of them were raising red flags. None of them were shouting and saying, you cannot take these generators from Kanilai because they are very important. One, the generator is powering the water tank. Number two, the generator is powering the electricity and women's gardens in Kanilai. This is why I said, if Adama Barrow succeeds in usurping this power from local authority, we will be in a position where Barrow and his NPP gang can do anything they want. They can run Gambia like a mafia state, as it's happening now. They're involved in the drugs trade. No drug dealers have been successfully prosecuted, despite the large amounts of drugs that have entered the Republic of the Gambia since 2017. No drug dealer has been successfully prosecuted. Whenever they apprehend the drugs and the drug dealers go free for very suspicious reasons. We all know why. We all know why. All right. I don't want to go there. This is about the draft constitution. I'm just painting the picture to give you Adama Barrow and his cabinet's intentions, which you can read clearly from this draft constitution. They took section 5 out of it because section 5 is telling them to be clean, to be accountable to the public, to be honest, to be truthful, to mean what they say and say what they mean. All right. That's what chapter 5 in the draft constitution of 2020 stated in here. Leadership and integrity, conduct and oath of public officers. A public officer shall behave, whether in public and official life, in private life, or in association with other person in a manner that avoids any conflict between personal interests and public or official duties. All right? Chapter 5 says there should be no conflict of interest. All right? Adama Barrow's government sacked 2 ministers who were widely criticized for having public conflict of interest. One of them is Sirif Abasanya. According to them, they sacked him because there's a conflict of interest where he awarded contracts to his own company in his child's name. The other one is Usman Ba, the Minister of Digital Economy and Transformation, something like that. They sacked him because his company had interest in a contract that was awarded to his company, a company that he worked before, or he had shares in it, he had an interest in it. All right? But it's the same conflict of interest where Guy Construction in Banjul is unilaterally being given contracts for the Banjul project, unilaterally being given seaport contracts in the Gambia by Adama Barrow's government because they benefit from Guy construction. In many other ways, I don't want to go into that now. Adama Barrow's government unilaterally gave contracts to many other companies. I spoke about this before, we'll come to it later. But today is about the draft Constitution 2024. So this point where the draft Constitution 2020 was asking for public officials not to engage in matters that will bring about conflict of interest. We saw it at the Jana Commission, we saw it at TRRC, we're seeing it on a daily basis under the government of Adama Barrow. Money that was meant for the Republic of the Gambia found its way into Adama Barrow's wife's coffers. And when they asked Adama Barrow, why did national funds meant for the Republic of the Gambia, $35 million is meant for the Republic of the Gambia, why did that money end up in your wife's account? He said it went in there because it was urgent for them to purchase or to hire a private jet or to put together their trip to go to China. So therefore, his wife's account, presumably, his wife's account is the only account in the government that money could be deposited, where they can withdraw it to be able to hire a private jet, a chartered flight, to go to China on their trip that they went to China in 2017 or 2018. 2017, I think, where Adama Barrow went and disgraced us. He didn't even know what the One China policy was. And when they asked him about the One China policy, he started answering questions totally unrelated to One China policy. The same thing he did when he went to Turkey. They asked him questions about Turkey and its historical significance, and he went talking about the roundabouts and all whatnot. All right? So anyway, this section was totally removed by Adama Barrow. So chapter 5, section 25 of the same chapter 5, it says, compromising any public or official interest in favor of a personal interest. This is Adama Barrow's government, personal interest. I spoke about the draft, all right? The draft is about Adama Barrow's personal interest. It's not for national interest. So everything that is here to protect the interests of the public, Adama Barrow's government removed because they are all about serving themselves, corruption, nepotism. That's all they care about. They don't care about the Gambian people. This is why, again, I'm questioning why anyone would contemplate voting for Adama Barrow again in 2026. But then, we the opposition figures, we the opposition parties are giving him every reason to believe that he's going to win the 2026 election, that he's going to go on for another 10 years because we're busy infighting. We're busy fighting between ourselves rather than organizing ourselves, finding a suitable candidate who will bring all opposition parties together and beat Adama Barrow nice and clean in 2026. All opposition parties. No, we're busy fighting between us. We're busy chasing lost causes. All right? If we don't get our game together, if we don't forget our past and forgive each other, we don't have to forget, we have to forgive each other. If we don't forgive the past and come together and look for Gambia's interest, and that Gambia's interest is an immediate need. We're not looking at 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. It's an immediate need. We need to protect the Republic of the Gambia immediately, urgently. If we cannot see the Gambia, and if we cannot see where Adama Barrow is taking us, if we cannot see that Adama Barrow is actually drowning us, I feel sorry for ourselves. That's the reason why Adama Barrow is cocky, he's arrogant. He's saying he's not going to leave power until he sees Ousainou Darboe dead. And he's going to go and confirm that Ousainou Darboe is dead before he leaves power, as if we, the citizens, cannot do anything to remove him from power. But the National Assembly election in 2022 showed that the opposition have the popular vote. The local government elections in 2023 showed that the opposition had the popular vote. The problem is now uniting the opposition under a uniting candidate. And then we can confront Adama Barrow, beat him, clean him up, totally destroy him in 2026 and his NPP government. No, we're busy fighting between ourselves. We're busy. I don't like Ousainou Darboe, so therefore I'll vote for Adama Barrow to keep Darboe out. I don't like President Jammeh, so therefore I'm UDP. I'm definitely not going to form an alliance with APRC and then forgiving the past and coming together. I'm not interested in that because I will never forgive President Jammeh. That's what some UDP people think like. What is clear, and I will state this again, and Doi people as well. That's how they think. We'll never forgive President Jammeh, even though most of their allegations are still not proven. Even though some of the acts of government that they said President Jammeh ordered are happening today in the Gambia. People have been detained longer than they should. People are dying left, right, and center. People are dying in mysterious circumstances. The government of Adama Barrow killed 73 children and more. Government of Adama Barrow killed people in Kanilai, killed people in Faraba. But we're still talking about President Jammeh. The UDP's got that will to pursue President Jammeh to their death, to Gambia's total destruction. APRC has got that will. We don't like UDP for what they did before 2017. Joy is the same. We don't like President Jammeh. We will never forgive him, even though most of what we have now to go by is allegations and allegations. But the same Adama Barrow they gave us in 2017 was caught on tape killing people in Kanilai, was caught on tape. I'm not saying Adama Barrow himself picked up the gun and shot people in Kanilai and Faraba. No. Barrow, when we talk about Adama Barrow, we're talking about the state now, his government. All right? They kill people in Kanilai, they kill people in Faraba. People died in police custody, about 10 people. They killed several people in concert with the Senegalese authorities. The government of Adama Barrow is still killing people from Fonyi region. They displaced over 10,000 people from Fonyi region. The government of Adama Barrow has done that, something that we never saw under President Jammeh. But again, I don't want to go too deep in there. I'm reading why Adama Barrow removed Chapter 5 from the Draft Constitution 2024. Because that Draft Constitution 2024 goes totally against the ethos of the way Adama Barrow and his gang run the Republic of the Gambia. Adama Barrow came to power. Within 4 or 5 months, he started serving himself with a new mansion. When they asked him, how come you're building a new mansion just 5, 6, 7 months into power? How come you're building a new mansion? He says, oh, because I'm a president now, you know, due to my status, I have to build a house that commensurates with my status here and there. Yeah, that's why I built that mansion in Mankamankunda. And it's like, really? It's a state house where you're supposed to have people to go and visit you for official functions. Why do you have to have a mansion in Mankamankunda? Then another one in Mankamankunda. Then several other houses. Now he's stolen state property in Fajara. This guy doesn't care about the Republic of the Gambia. He's all about himself. His ministers are all about themselves. Everything that he's boasting about now is projects that were initiated, applied for, or basically approved by the government of President Jammeh. He's just implementing them. Again, I don't want to go there. I'm telling you why. Chapter 5 is a contraflow to the way NPP runs the government. It's a total opposite. It's an antagonist to the way Adama Barrow runs his administration. He doesn't like that. He doesn't want the antagonist. Chapter 5 is a blockade to NPP's interest. It's absolutely obstructing them on their path to destroy the Republic of the Gambia. That's what's going on. That's why Adama Barrow wouldn't want that Chapter 5 to be implemented at all. Yeah? And they removed it totally from the Constitution. And we know why they removed it from the draft 2024. They removed it because it's against Adama Barrow's interest to have this Chapter 5 in. And instead of amending it, they removed it totally because none of that Chapter 5 is in their interest. Financial probity of public officials. Under Adama Barrow, under his dead body, the guy will never be accountable. In fact, if God gave Adama Barrow the choice to be accountable, he'll say, no, I don't want to be accountable. All right? But I don't think he's thinking about life hereafter at all. Doesn't care. All he wants is self-aggrandizement, self-enrichment, self-entrenchment. He wants to perpetuate power, but he wants total power in his hands, absolute power. Because if he takes it away from local authority, we're done. Even if they elect you as an opposition chairperson in the Gambia, you will have absolutely no powers to contest against the central government if they wish to implement or block certain matters from taking place in your administrative area. That's Adama Barrow's modus operandi. That's the way NPP frolics around our public administration. They're not interested in accountability at all. So it says financial probity of public officials. A gift to a public officer on a public or official occasion or an account of the office he or she holds is a gift or donation to the state or the institution or he or she represents and shall be delivered to the state through the Anti-Corruption Commission, unless the gift is otherwise exempted, whether conditionally or unconditionally by an act of the National Assembly. So Rohingya here, was it the United Nations or whoever gave Gambia a gift of $200,000 for the work that the government of the Gambia, not individuals of the Gambia, private citizens of the Gambia. This is the work that the government of the Gambia put in place to bring about this genocide case against the Myanmar government, the Burma government. The authorities gave the Gambia $200,000 as a gift. What did the officials of the Ministry of Justice do? Take the money and share it between themselves. Yes, and when they asked Dawda Jallow, the most corrupt, one of the most corrupt justice ministers we have, when they asked him, why is a gift given to the state of the Gambia for the work we've done for the Rohingya people to bring about this genocide case against the Myanmar government, the Burma government? He said, oh, that money was for the work that was put in by officials of the Ministry of Justice, who used the state's hours to do the work, used the state's facilities to do the work, used the state's funds to fly in and out, up and down, to The Hague and back, to other countries and back, to initiate the legal proceeding against the government of Burma, Myanmar. Therefore, that $200,000 that was given to the state of the Gambia was not meant for the officials of the Ministry of Justice. These Ministry of Justice officials have probably traveled in the name of Gambia instigating that legal proceeding against the Myanmar government. And they'll probably been paid per diem for such travels, such works, and probably been paid overtime for carrying out such functions on behalf of the state. They took the money between themselves, 200,000, and shared it between themselves at the Ministry of Justice. And when people asked them, they came with very frivolous excuses or justifications of why they shared that money between themselves. Chapter 5 was there to stop such criminality, such corruption, such unsympathetic moves in our public administration. That's what Chapter 5 is there for. All right? And several other stuff, because I don't want to read everything. If I read everything, I spend like 2-3 hours, and I don't have that much time. I need to finish this in about half an hour. But I'm just telling you some of these issues. I'll go to the most important, very dangerous ones. All right? So Chapter 5 is out completely. You can read all of it. I've read it. We should reject this draft constitution outright. Parliament should reject it straight away. It's not in the interest of the Republic of the Gambia. If you want 2-term limits, presidents like Adama Barrow should not even go past the first term. Presidents like Adama Barrow should not even complete their one and only term. He should have been impeached a long time ago for constitutional violations, of which there were many in his first 5 years. But we thought, okay, that was coalition government. Although he was the president, he was overseeing everything. And in Adama Barrow's own voice, he said, the president is the most informed person on Gambian soil. So therefore, he knew everything that was going on. And in Adama Barrow's own words again, he said he didn't care about what his ministers were doing until his position was threatened. Again, that solidifies my belief, my assertions earlier, that Adama Barrow only cares about himself, self-serving, self-centered, egocentric. That's what this guy only cares about himself. He said he didn't want to know. He didn't care about what his ministers were doing, stealing money, defrauding the taxpayers, embezzlement, traveling incessantly for no good reason. He didn't care about it until his position became threatened. Then he suddenly woke up. Oh, now they want to get me out of power by 2019. I'll sack them all. I'll sack all the UDP ministers. Before that, he sacked all the other ministers like D.A. Jao, OG, and others. Now sack all the UDP ministers because they're asking me to respect the coalition 2016 agreement of 3-year transition rule and not contesting for the presidency. I don't want that. I want to self-serve. I want to be selfish. I want everything to work according to my dictates. I am repeating what Adama Barrow said. He didn't care about what his ministers were doing until his position became threatened. Who threatened his position? Ousainou Darboe. Therefore, he sacked Ousainou Darboe and all the other UDP ministers who were in his government. But when it comes to Gambia's interests, he doesn't care. The Minister of Health, Dr. Amadou Samade, stood here and said, I lost $148 million of COVID funds. My department killed 73 children. Adama Barrow said he's doing a good job. Why do you think Barrow is retaining him? It's the same drug dealer case. They have an interest in retaining some drug dealers or not prosecuting them, not convicting them. They have an interest in not sacking Dr. Amadou Samate. That $148 million that was missing in 2021, COVID funds, didn't go anywhere else apart from funding the NPP presidential election in 2021. Do you think Adama Barrow is going to sack him after benefiting so much from those COVID funds? No. That's why he's still protecting Dr. Amadou Samate, despite the fact that our hospitals have got no ambulances, no fuel, no batteries, no CT scanners, no MRI scanners, nothing is working. No water, no electricity. You think he's going to do that? That's chapter 5 for you. All right, the next one, I'm going to go to fundamental rights because this is very, very important. All right, that's where the do or die, literally do or die situation is, the fundamental human rights. All right, our rights have to be safeguarded. They changed it again. The authoritarianism, totalitarianism that I was talking about earlier has come to the fore here. It's been laid bare by the intentions of Adama Barrow and his cabinet. But I'm hoping that this draft will die in its first reading at Parliament. I hope they don't give it another chance after its first presentation. They should take a sledgehammer and absolutely crack it, beat it to pieces, break it to pieces, and take the pieces and burn them to give them no chance of recovery. The 1997 Constitution is a solid piece of documentation that was written. It is one of the best documents written in the sub-region. Some of the sections we can amend. Doesn't have to go through 123 million that they spent to put this draft constitution together in 2020. We didn't have to spend even 10 million in putting this draft constitution of 2024 together. Just amend the sections of 1997 constitution that are amendable, but they ignored it again. They ignored the provisions in 1997 constitution that are easy to amend because of the interest of Adama Barrow, because of the interest of the players who were there in coalition government 2016. They ignored those amendments. They removed the age limit because that suited Ousainou Darboe. They removed the MP protections, protecting parties, so that when MPs are invested into by political parties, elected into office, if they defect to another party, they lose their seat. They removed that. They didn't know why President Jammeh put that in there. Now they know, because a lot of UDP MPs defected to Adama Barrow, and it brought about a significant reduction in UDP's power in parliament. That is one reason why Adama Barrow had the courage to contest the 2021 elections, because of the defection from UDP to NPP. And there was nothing that the UDP could have done about it, even though the UDP invested financial resources, materials, time, and everything that goes with it to elect their MPs. They defected and went to Adama Barrow. They changed those provisions because at the time it suited them. Why didn't they go ahead and make other provisions? Why didn't they change the term limits? Why didn't they institute it at the time when they had absolute power in government? The coalition 20, UDP had absolute power in the National Assembly. The coalition should have had 2/3 majority or even 3/4 majority in parliament to make these amendments that we're crying about now. But no, at the time it suited them not to make these amendments. Now most of them are opposition. They want these amendments made. That's why people reject them in 2020, because they had the opportunity to change those clauses. In 2017 they didn't, 2018 they didn't, 2019 they didn't. So you bring us a draft constitution in 2020 that was not in the interest of the Gambia. And the draft was slaughtered that way. Now, the draft has showed up again in its worst format, fundamental rights. All right, let's go to where the majority of changes were made. All right, okay. Enforcement of fundamental human rights. This is where they made the most changes. All right, enforcement of fundamental human rights. We have seen the Gambia police force jump on opposition figures who just went to a fundraiser on the 18th of February 2024. The government of Adama Barrow sent police officers to beat up, to tear gas, and disrupt a fundraising activity that was organized by an opposition party. Something they shouldn't have done. Enforcement of fundamental human rights. We have rights to assemble, we have rights to associate, we have rights to have fun, we have rights to go and fundraise on behalf of the political party, or even a section of the political party, or even a chat group. We have every right to go and generate funds for the Voice of Lamin Tamba 1, the Voice of Lamin Tamba 2 if we want. We can organize a fundraising. APRC Babili Mansa, APRC Noto Alliance, APR, we can organize a fundraising. And we applied for a permit, even though we didn't need a permit. You don't need a permit to have your fundraising indoors on private land. You don't need a permit to go and have a fundraiser on private land. But we applied for a permit anyway, just to give us double assurance. And the government of Adama Barrow still violated our rights to associate, our rights to raise funds, our rights to move about, our rights to assemble peacefully. Adama Barrow's government still violated it, the same government that is still accusing President Jammeh of rights violations. But anyway, fundamental human rights. So what sections did they change here? All right. The fundamental human rights, they changed a lot. They added many things here. All right. Some of these were not in the draft of 2020, but they added them there because it is in the interest of Adama Barrow. So if you go to where the fundamental rights are, and in this draft 2024 is in page 42. All right. That's where the enforcement of fundamental rights are. So it says, if any person contemplated in section 9, 1, 2, alleges that sections 23, I don't even, to section 62 or section 63, 4 has been, is being, or is likely to be by any person, or he or she may apply to the High Court for redress. Okay, fine. I'll skip that part. I'll tell you where they made the changes that will affect us in terms of freedom of speech, in terms of free media. They changed all of that. Okay, this is the most important part now. Yeah, listen. Limitation of fundamental human rights and freedoms. They changed this section. Limitations. A fundamental right or freedom in this chapter shall not be limited except by law, and then only to the extent that the limitation is reasonable and justifiable in an open and democratic society based on human dignity, equality, and freedom, taking into account A, the nature of the fundamental right or freedom, the importance of the purpose of the limitation, the nature of the extent. So I'll skip that because there's so many of it. I don't want to spend the whole day talking about it here. Notwithstanding 1 and 2 to the provision in an act of the National Assembly may limit the application of fundamental rights or freedoms in the following provisions to persons serving in the armed and security services. That's fine. No problems with that. Fundamental human rights and freedoms that shall not be limited. Okay, so those are the normal ones. Specific rights and freedoms. So they changed this entire section, right to life. They changed it completely. Yeah, actually they removed it. Every person has the right to life. So they removed everything else. Every person has the right to life. There were many subsections A to F. They removed all of those subsections. So that's chapter 30 now. It used to be chapter 38 in the draft constitution of 2020. Now it's chapter 38. Every person has a right to life. Number 2, they removed subsection 2. They removed subsections A, B, C, D, and E, and F completely. They took them out. Why did they take them out? Only Adama Barrow and his cabinet. I know why they took them out. Because these are seen as obstacles by the government of Adama Barrow. That's what they're doing here. Protection of liberty. They didn't touch that part, except for changing the draft constitution of 2020 wanted Gambians to be detained for a maximum of 48 hours without charges. Adama Barrow has gone in the draft of 2024, his government has gone back to the 72 hours rule. So they don't want 48 hours anymore. They want to detain you for 3 days before they charge you or decide that, okay, we're going to release you. They've removed the 48-hour requirement. Why did they remove it? Only they know. For me personally, 72 hours is reasonable. As long as they are not cynically keeping somebody for 72 hours, they wait until the last minute and then free you. You've lost your freedom for 3 solid days just because somebody wanted to take your freedom away. At the beginning of this deliberation, I spoke about the significance that the law puts to people's freedoms. That they'll rather allow 100 people to go free than convict one innocent person. That whoever is in detention, the state must do everything in its power to charge them or free them. Do not detain people because you're not happy with them, you don't like them, or they're opposing you, or they're opposition figures, or they're in your personal interest. Don't detain them for 72 hours if you don't have to. Even though the Constitution says you can detain them for 72 hours, if you found no reason to keep them for longer than 5 hours, 6 hours, let them go. Take their details. If you do need to arrest them again, call them, write to them, email them, go to their houses and say, unfortunately, we found new information to call you back to the station or to detain you while we investigate this particular matter. You don't detain them for the sake of it. All right? So they removed the 48 hours, they're going back to 72 hours. These are the same Adama Barrow and his people who were criticizing President Jammeh, and they said 72 hours detention is too long. They're going back to the 1997 Constitution in that respect. All right? But they changed some of these sections. I'll tell you where they changed it. Yeah, I'm skipping some sections. Right to privacy. Okay. Right to fair administrative action. Right to fair trial. So they didn't touch that. I'll tell you where they touched. Freedom of expression. This is serious now. Listen to this. It's section 38 now. It used to be section 46 in draft constitution 2020. Now in draft constitution 2024, it's section 38, freedom of expression. This is where Adama Barrow and his government just want to pick people up because they said Adama Barrow is a fool, because that's what they picked Ibrahim Adiba for, isn't it? Ibrahim Adiba said he's a fool, he's uneducated, he's ignorant, and he's selfish or corrupt, something like that. Everything that a citizen is allowed to speak about. If you're uneducated, every Gambian knows that. The whole world knows that. Adama Barrow is uneducated. He's ignorant. His conduct is exactly like that. He's not delivering to the other one that Ibrahim Adiba said was he was not delivering to the Gambian people. It's a total failure. Everybody knows that. All right? Maybe the foolishness. Again, if a president stands up and says, I want the opposition person, I'm not going to leave power until the opposition figure dies, and I want to go and make sure I've confirmed that they're dead before I leave power. Don't you think that's a foolish statement? So if an opposition figure comes out and says that statement is rather foolish and childish, so do you pick them up for incitement or sedition or anything like that? They've added something here. So freedom of expression. Every person has the right to freedom of expression, which includes freedom to seek, receive, or impart information or ideas, freedom of artistic creativity and academic freedom, and freedom of scientific research. The right to freedom of expression does not extend to Propaganda for war, I agree. We should not allow propaganda for war. B, incitement or violence or break law and order or advocacy. So if I'm advocating on behalf of APRC or on behalf of UDP, if I'm advocating on behalf of Usainu Dabo or advocating on behalf of President Jammeh or Halifa Saleh or any other Gambian citizen, should they find me wanting for advocating? That part C of part B needs to be removed from the Constitution completely. Advocacy for what? If you're advocating for war, yes. If you're advocating for armed insurrection, yes. Make that absolutely clear. Don't leave it vague. This is open to abuse, total abuse. So this is section 38, subsection 2. Part B has got a C, advocacy. Advocacy of what? If I'm advocating for Gunjur not to have sand mining, if I'm advocating to bring about a clean environment to Gunjur, which has been destroyed since Adama Barrow came to power, or Mandinari, which has been destroyed environmentally since Adama Barrow came to power, or even Banjul next to State House, which is now being sand mined in a city that's already being eroded, in a city that's already below sea level, in a city that's already suffering from the catastrophic elements of nature. They're mining the city of Banjul. They're changing the geology of the city of Banjul, resulting in major floods and our Bond Road disappearing. Some of our areas of Banjul disappearing. So if I'm advocating to ensure that destruction to our environment doesn't take place, they could suddenly pick me up and say, you're breaking the law. We're going to charge you for this. We're going to charge you for that. That section C, subsection C of section 2, or section 38, subsection 2, subsection C, that needs to be removed. Paragraph 2, subsection C, needs to be removed completely. Advocacy of what? Advocacy could mean many things, but they could abuse it. You can't say anything on behalf of somebody. You cannot fight for somebody. All right? So now, that's part of the fundamental freedoms. There are other sections that are dangerous. Freedom of media. Again, freedom of media. They changed, the NPP changed, because we've seen Adama Barrow close the Daily Observer deliberately. This year, we've seen Adama Barrow's government close 5 media houses. They said overtax, non-payment of tax. That's what they said. Non-payment of tax. That's what the government of Adama Barrow said. They've closed 5 media houses. So therefore, it's not a surprise when we come to section 39, the new section 39. It used to be section 47 in the draft constitution of 2020. Now it's section 39 in draft constitution 2024. Freedom of the media, they changed a lot of things, very significant changes. Listen, there shall be a free and independent media. All right? Really? So everything is the same, but they added subsection 3, section 39, subsection 3. The right to own and operate media in subsection 2 shall be limited to only Gambians, okay? So the right to own and operate media in subsection 2A shall be limited to only Gambians. They added that in there. Subsection 4, they didn't change much there. Subsection 5, they added something to it. They removed something and added stuff. So subsection 5 says, the state shall not penalize any person for any opinion or view or the content of any broadcast, publication, or dissemination. Adama Barrow's government doesn't want that. They removed that part. So section 39, subsection 5, in the draft constitution of 2020, it says, the state shall not penalize any person for any opinion or view or the content of any broadcast, publication, or dissemination. Well, we've seen them pick up Mohammed Dabo here and torture him and detain him. We've seen them pick up Alaji Bora. We've seen them pick up APRC executive before. We've seen them pick up other media personnel in the Gambia. for their view, yeah, for content that they provided, the government calls them for questioning. They've picked up Mahdi Jobate here for airing his view. They picked up several other people for airing their view under the government of Adama Barrow. They said incitement. Ibrahim Adiba and others. Our last defender and others. Many people they picked up because they spoke up against the stuff that the government of Adama Barrow is doing or against Adama Barrow's own statements. The government of Adama Barrow don't want that anymore. They've removed that completely from the freedom of the media. So now they can penalize the media houses. They can penalize you for what you said at a media interview. They can penalize you for anything, your view or content that you produce that they don't like. And the previous section, section 38, for advocacy. If you're advocating for something, they can pick you up because you've broken the law. Yeah? And here, access to information. Every citizen has a right of access to information held by a public body. But then they added something to subsection 3. Section 40, access to information. So subsection 3 of that, they've added. The state shall publish and publicize important information affecting the nation in a manner prescribed in an act of National Assembly. Okay? Freedom of religion, no problems. They didn't change that. Freedom of assembly, they changed that a lot. Freedom of assembly, they changed that significantly from the draft of 2020. And this is how it goes. Every person has the right to freedom of assembly. Freedom, again, typing errors, grammatical errors. Every person has the right to freedom of assembly and demonstrate, all right, peaceably and without arms. They added subsection 2 to section 42. Section 42 is freedom of assembly. They've added something there. They've added subsection 2. And subsection 2, you'll be curious to know what subsection 2 says. Subsection 2 says, the freedom referred to in subsection 1 shall be exercised subject to the law of the Gambia insofar as the law imposes reasonable restriction on the exercise of the rights and freedoms thereby conferred, which are necessary in a democratic society and are required in the interest of the sovereignty and integrity of the Gambia, national security, public order, decency, or morality in relation to contempt of court. Why do you think they added in there? They can use that and say, your freedom to assemble in subsection 1, we're going to forfeit that right to assemble because it's threatening the interest of the nation, even though the assembly is peaceful. They just want to restrict your freedoms. All right? So now, if you own media houses or you go to media houses, anything you say, you produce content, if this draft passes, they will punish you for it. But that wasn't in the draft Constitution 2020. It wasn't in the 1997 Constitution. And they say the 1997 Constitution is a bad constitution, but it didn't contain such penalties in it. However, the draft Constitution 2024 has these penalties. All right, I'll go to the right to education. President Jammeh's government made it compulsory. Education, basic and secondary education was compulsory and it was free. Adama Barrow's government want to take the money that is spent on secondary education and pocket it. So they've removed secondary education from free and compulsory education. So now, under Adama Barrow's government, you will be paying for secondary education and it might not be compulsory anymore. They're taking us back to the ignorant ages. Again, they're taking us back to the 1960s, 1970s, where many people didn't go to primary school. If they went to primary school, they were lucky. They weren't able to go to secondary school and high school. President Jammeh's government came and made secondary, primary, middle, senior secondary compulsory, made most of it free for all Gambian citizens, your right to education. The state had to provide facilities, all means necessary for you to have your formative education free and compulsory. The government of Adama Barrow don't want that anymore. So the budget for secondary education will now be pocketed by his government officials. if this draft constitution is passed. Let's refuse that. Let's make sure education from grade 1 to grade 12 is free, compulsory for every Gambian citizen. We have to ensure that happens at least from grade 1 to 9. Make that free, make that compulsory, make it accessible to every single Gambian citizen. The government of President Jammeh did that. The government of Adama Barrow can do that. And the government of Adama Barrow is getting more funds than the government of President Jammeh ever managed. And Adama Barrow is taking more loans than the government of President Jammeh ever did in its 22 years. Why can't they afford secondary education? Why can't they make it compulsory? They changed it. Why? Apart from corruption, why will they take secondary education from funding, government funding? For what reason? That's what they want to do. If we allow this draft constitution, your children will not go to school because they could suddenly close a school near you because the government doesn't have funds to run that secondary school. They could suddenly decide that they're not going to provide textbooks to your school. Schools will close left, right, and center because if the government doesn't fund secondary education, who's going to fund secondary education in the Gambia? You see the criminality of Adama Barrow and his cabinet. You want Gambian citizens not to go to school. You want to close secondary schools up and down the country. Why would we allow that? The right to education is sacrosanct, fundamental. You cannot take that from any constitution. Anywhere in the world, formative education should be free, should be compulsory. Adama Barrow wants to change that, taking us back to the dark ages because he wasn't educated. Therefore, he hasn't attached any value to education of our children, our future generations. And if he wants to stay in power for another 10 years, that's 10 years is a generation of our Gambian children who will be born ignorant, grow up ignorant, not be educated. Taking our socio-economic advancement that we achieved since 1994 backwards. We're going back. That's what Adama Barrow and his government want to institute. This is why what we're facing now. The education of our future generations is at peril. It's on the brink of total destruction because how many people can afford tuition fees at secondary school? We have seen how Gambia College is falling apart since they introduced the fee-paying mechanism. Now you want to take that from a tertiary institution down to secondary education. The government doesn't want to provide funding. They don't want to make secondary education free and compulsory. That's what Adama Barrow is trying to achieve and his cabinet. For what reason? It's because their children are going to private schools. They're getting per diems. They're getting paid handsomely. But what about the child of the poor farmer in the countryside? What's the life of a family that doesn't have anyone working in executive position who will steal money from the government to pay tuition fees for their children to go to private schools? Because if you're not funding secondary school, most of the government schools that exist now are going to fold. They're going to collapse. They're going to close. Therefore, the only places that other children can get their education is private education. How many of them can afford private education in the Gambia? How many private schools are going to be in the Gambia that will absorb students from secondary schools up and down the country? Where are these students going to live? Where are they going to stay to go to private schools? This guy and his cabinet have got no sympathy, absolutely no empathy for what the populations in Gambia are going through. They're all about serving themselves. They don't care about what's happening to other people in the country. This is what I said at the beginning of this conversation that we're having now. All right? That's dangerous. We reject it. We want our children to be educated free. Schools have to be accessible. Under the previous administration, journey times, catchment areas of schools were reduced from 15 to 10 to 5 kilometers per student. You didn't have to travel more than 2.5 kilometers to, and you didn't want to travel 2.5 kilometers from the school to your home. President Jammeh reduced it to 5 kilometers from where it was to 10, 15 kilometers. Some communities didn't even have to have schools. the APRC government ensured schools were built across the country, dotted around the Gambia. And they made sure they continued that education up to a point where the catchment areas were reduced from 15 kilometers, 10 kilometers to 5 kilometers return journey to school. And President Jammeh's manifesto, 2016 election manifesto, was going to further reduce the travel time to the nearest school, basic education, to 3 kilometers. So you wouldn't travel more than 1.5 kilometers to your school, and you wouldn't travel from your school back to your house for more than 1.5 kilometers. The catchment area per school would have been 3 kilometers at most if he won the 2016 election. And we have every right to believe that he won the 2016 election. Because if you do not allow his petition to go to the Supreme Court to be scrutinized, then that is voluntary acquiescence to state that, yes, we agree with his petition, we suspect that we rigged the election, we don't want that contest to come to the Supreme Court. So therefore, we will refuse that petition to go to the Supreme Court, because if he goes to the Supreme Court, we will have no case to defend ourselves. 2021 elections is the same. The fact that the matter didn't go to trial meant that the election was rigged. We can all confirm that the election was rigged, because if it went to trial, according to them, submitting Adama Barrow's documents to Adama Barrow's own appointed lawyer is not deemed good service. Only in Gambia will you find that sort of excuse from a Supreme Court. In the United Kingdom, where most of Gambian laws are derived, if you appoint a representative or a lawyer to act on your behalf, you can serve the lawyer documents. It's the responsibility of that lawyer to then transmit those documents served on them to you. You cannot call that service not appropriate. But the Supreme Court of the Gambia had other ideas of frustrating the election petition of 2021 and 2016. How can you serve on the chief of protocol of Adama Barrow, who's got nothing to do with his legal case, and you said, oh, that's good service? But Adama Barrow and his NPP appointed a lawyer who's their representative, who should be handling all their legal matters. You submitted the petition to him, and you're saying that's not good service. That's what the Supreme Court did to us in 2021 and rejected the UDP petition because it didn't fulfill one of 3 points. But a few months later, the High Court said that was good service by the police, even though they didn't fulfill the third of that submission criteria. Who are they fooling? Do they think we're fools? The same thing that Adama Barrow is thinking and his cabinet. Let's put that draft before Gambians, they'll pass it, so that Adama Barrow, you can be in power for 20 years. So that, like Macky Sall, you can think Gambians are stupid. You can think your current term is not going to count. So therefore, the counting should start from 2026 if you win. Are we going to allow Adama Barrow to win in 2026? No. If we're conscious and we love our country and we're patriotic citizens, Adama Barrow should not win in 2026. Let's proceed. We'll go back to the consumer protection rights. So they removed all the consumer protection rights that were there to protect Gambian people. Adama Barrow removed them completely. So that's section 56. All right. Adama Barrow removed section 65, sorry, of the Draft Constitution 2020. They removed the consumer protection section. So the consumer protection section in the draft of 2020, which I agree with, there were lots of sections in 2020 that I agreed with, but there are parts of the 2020 draft that I didn't agree with. They were just crazy. All right. My laptop is warning me that the battery is almost done. All right, cool. We proceed. I'll come to the marriage element as well. The marriage element is very important. I'll come to that. I passed it, but I'll go back to it. It's next to the citizenship stuff. All right. So the consumer protection right says consumers have the right to goods and services of reasonable quality, the information necessary for them to gain full benefit from goods and services, the protection of their health, safety, and economic interest, and compensation for loss of injury arising from defects in goods or services. Do you know why government of Adama Barrow removed that? They killed 73 children. They don't want people to sue his government for it. The government of Adama Barrow killed 73 children and more. We believe it's in hundreds. But let's take their figure that they gave us anyway, 73. They don't want them to sue. They don't want our sisters, our moms, our nieces that are dying in labor because of power cuts, because of lack of water supply, because of lack of surgical gloves, lack of blood, and other things. They don't want to sue the government. All right? So they're not protecting us. They want to do what they want and get away with it. That's in a nutshell why they removed that consumer protection rights from the draft constitution 2024. All right, let me go back to marriage quickly. Bearing in mind what's happening in the world now, I can get up today and identify myself as a woman. I can identify myself as a cat. I can identify myself as an alien. I think the draft needs to go back and say marriage in the Gambia is between a biologically born man and a biologically born woman. Because I can suddenly turn around and say, oh, I identify as a woman, so therefore I'm going to marry that man. Our draft constitution only says marriage is between a man and a woman. So what if I identify as a woman now and I want to go and marry another man? They should go back and clarify that section, change it. Marriage should be between a biologically born man and a biologically born woman in our constitution. Simple. When you say man and woman, in the world that we exist now, the world we're heading to now, it could mean somebody identifying themselves as women or somebody identifying themselves as cats. What do we want? Can we make it clearer? But that's the marriage section. Let me proceed with other sections. I think by now we all know that this draft constitution is not there for the interests of the Gambia, right? Declaration of state of public emergency. So they changed that a bit. It doesn't matter to me because a state of emergency is a state of emergency. Parliament can always change those sections, all right? But the danger with declaration of state of emergency, Adama Barrow can just declare it now and prolong his stay in power. Or if he knows he's going to lose the election, before the election, he can postpone the election. He can create something and postpone the election and stay in power. Just exactly the same thing that's happening in other countries now where there's war. There are no elections because the incumbent is prolonging their term and prolonging their term. When elections can actually be held, despite the problems happening in the nation, you can still have elections because some fights that are taking place, the incumbent actually has a part to play in it. That's why people are in civil war. If you remove the incumbent, maybe that problem will then become resolved easily. Yeah, Adama Barrow's government removed a section that ensured there's no abuse of powers when it comes to state of emergency. So they removed this section. A state of public emergency exists only when it is necessary to meet the circumstances identified in paragraph A and B. And what did paragraph A and B say? A state is threatened by war, invasion, general insurrection, civil disorder, natural disaster, and or form of serious emergency. Or a situation exists which, if it is allowed to continue, may lead to an event identified in paragraph A. And C, it is necessary to meet the circumstances identified in A and B. So Adama Barrow removed that. So they didn't want a state of emergency to only be declared when it met the conditions in A and B. They removed it so they can declare the state of emergency anyhow they want, even though the state of emergency didn't meet the conditions of subsection A and subsection B, or paragraph A and paragraph B, I should say. Yeah? So go to section 61, declaration of a state of emergency, subsection 2, paragraph A and B. It sets strong conditions by which a state of emergency will be declared. No other way will a state of emergency be declared unless it meets paragraph A and paragraph B. Adama Barrow's government removed that requirement to comply with paragraph A and B. So remove the requirement. So now they can declare a state of emergency by citing anything. That's what they did there. They don't want to comply with paragraph A and B of subsection 2 of section 61. They want to do as they wish. They want to change it how they want. They made lots of amendments there as well. Lots of amendments. So subsection 7 of section 61. In the draft constitution, it says, the Supreme Court may decide on the validity of a declaration of the state of emergency. Supreme Court may decide the validity of a declaration of state of emergency, any extension of a declaration of a state of emergency, any legislation enacted or an action taken or consequence of a declaration of emergency. The Supreme Court has a right to decide whether the state of emergency is legitimate. Adama Barrow's government doesn't want that. They removed that from the Constitution. They just want to declare a state of emergency as they wish, when they want, how they want, without anybody challenging it, without the Supreme Court determining whether that state of emergency is valid. The government of Adama Barrow. You see what their intentions are. You remember what I read at the beginning of this presentation? I said, the laws are passed with three motivations usually. There's a golden rule, there's a mischief rule, there's a literal rule. Adama Barrow's draft constitution 2024 is all about mischief. It's nothing to do with the interests of the Gambia. It's basically Adama Barrow giving himself absolute powers, entrenching himself, giving himself total power, authoritarian rule. That's what he wants to achieve by this draft constitution 2024. All right? I've been on this YouTube live for 1 hour and 51 minutes, and I'm going to end it in 9 minutes. I can come back again and have part 2 of this daft constitution. But what I know is we should all kick this constitution out. What the guy wants is to give himself absolute power. We're at Section 62 now, derogations from fundamental human rights under emergency powers. Adama Barrow doesn't want the Supreme Court to check whether his declaration of state of emergency are valid or not. He wants to declare it without the validity being checked. He wants to declare it without meeting paragraph A and B of Section 61, subsection 2. Persons detained under emergency powers. Okay, fine. They changed that bit. Interpretation of chapter 4. Interpretation of chapter 4. Okay. In this chapter, save where the context otherwise requires armed forces means the Navy, Army, and Air Force of the Gambia. Okay. So anyway, I'll leave that section for a bit. Representation of the people. The right to be registered and to vote. Okay, here, they changed something. They removed something here. And again, guess why they removed it? Section 66 we're at now, paragraph D has been removed. Paragraph D of subsection 1. A person is qualified to be registered as a voter and to vote at elections or referenda if the person is a citizen of the Gambia, is 18 years old or older, and is not declared to be of unsound mind. Paragraph D they removed. What did paragraph D say? Paragraph D say, a person is qualified to be registered as a voter and to vote at elections or referenda if the person has not been convicted of an election offense during the preceding 5 years. Adama Barrow's government removed it. So what? They want a person who's been convicted of an election offense over the last 5 years to be able to vote. So if you were caught rigging, taking ballot boxes from Manka Mankunda to Dobo, all right, and you were caught on it, and you were convicted of election offenses, you should not vote for 5 years. Adama Barrow's government wants you to be able to vote. They removed that section, that bar that was there, they removed it. Criminality. They're fancy criminals. They like criminals. It's the criminals that are sponsoring NPP and Adama Barrow's government. They love them. They love them in NPP. That's why they'll never convict any of these drug dealers. They'll never convict most of these people stealing public funds from the Gambia Post Authority, GRA, NAWEC, and other places. They'll not sack them as long as NPP gets their cut. They'll only sack them if NPP is not getting their cut or you threaten Adama Barrow's position. Then he'll sack you. Electoral laws. Okay. I don't want to spend time on those. Independent boundaries and electoral commission. So Adama Barrow's government changed that as well. The members of the commission shall be appointed by the president, subject to confirmation by the National Assembly. They removed that. Adama Barrow wants to appoint members of an electoral commission without parliament, without consulting parliament. He wants to elect his own NPP person in Remy Joyner to go and be the IEC chairman, so that when the election comes, Remy Joyner can take all of the opposition votes and give them to NPP. Look, guys, does this draft even have the chance to go to parliament? It should die before it goes to parliament. We remember when Adama Barrow wanted to appoint NPP personnel, NPP executive members as IEC officials. We all remember that. So now he wants to do exactly that without parliament scrutiny. So it says they want the members of the commission to be appointed by the president in consultation with the Judicial Service Commission and Public Service Commission, who are directly appointed by Adama Barrow. They don't want parliament to get involved, because if parliament is involved, parliament will block it. So he wants to, the people he personally appoints to the Judicial Service Commission and Public Service Commission, who are his poodles, his stooges, basically. He wants those people to look at his appointments to IEC, to become IEC chairpersons or commissioners. That's what he wants to do. The guy wants to rig the election in 2026 and subsequent elections. Refuse it. Yes, Bori Bojang, thank you very much. I agree with you entirely. He wants to appoint people who are the judges and juries to our election purposes. Functions of the commission. Yeah, we're talking about the independent boundaries and electoral commission now. All right, establishing a membership of the independent boundaries, and he wants to appoint his own people in those commissions. He doesn't want parliament to have a say in it. Is anybody doubting the mischief rule involved in presenting this draft constitution of 2024? Is anybody in their right mind thinking we should go and support the draft constitution of 2024? No, not by what we've heard together. Yeah, he wants to appoint his NPP people at IEC. He wants to appoint his NPP people at commissions. What do you think the results of those commissions would be? Free, fair, accountable, transparent? Not a chance. Not a chance. And many things. It's 1 hour 58 minutes. We stopped at independent boundaries and electoral commission. I can't continue because it's too long and I've got other responsibilities. So therefore, I'm going to end this YouTube live today. I'll create a part 2 to continue from section 72 of the draft constitution 2024, which is part 2, by the way, of the constitution, draft constitution. My conclusion is, so far, we've done part 1 of the constitution. We're at part 2, which starts with the independent boundaries and electoral commission, section 72. All right. When I come back again, I'll take it from 72, where Adama Barrow wants what PPP used to do. Under PPP, the interior minister of PPP, who is a member of PPP, was the one counting the votes, declaring election and doing stuff. Have you ever wondered why Jawara won every election by landslide? Every time the opposition will make noise. When they say, woo, PPP wins, and PPP dominates. Because their own interior minister was the one counting the votes, declaring the elections. And what do you think the result would be? President Jammeh, that they criticize of not being a Democrat, being a dictator, is the one that actually instituted the Independent Electoral Commission. The same commission that contributed to his downfall. The same commission which rigged the election in 2016 and brought us Adama Barrow. They said President Jammeh was not democratic. But President Jammeh was not close to media houses, except for media houses like the Independent, who, by the way, at TRRC admitted propagating fake news. Willan came at TRRC and said, Baba Gali Jallo of the Independent and other people at the Independent newspaper, whether it's Baba Gali Jallo or other, but the Independent newspaper was involved in falsifying reports against President Jammeh and his government. That's why they all fled. He said that at TRRC, I didn't take it from anybody's mouth. He said they were propagating false, fake news. That's why the government of President Jammeh pounced on them. But under President Jammeh, there was proliferation of media houses in the Gambia. President Jammeh brought this independent electoral commission to make sure his interior minister was not rigging the election and declaring it in his favor all the time. Now Adama Barrow wants to go back to the PPP era of appointing his own NPP people in these electoral commissions so that they can declare results, rig the elections on his behalf. Should this draft constitution even leave State House? No. Should it even go to our National Assembly? No. It's lifeless. It's dead. Totally dead. Section 72 of the draft constitution 2024 is where we will start when I come back on part 2 of the Daft Constitution 2024. From a daft cabinet, from a daft president, we have to kill it. It shouldn't proceed. It should have no life whatsoever. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I bring this YouTube live to a close. Thank you very much for dedicating 2 hours to listen to me. I am trying to give us an informed choice so that our people on the ground can understand what's going on. So take everything I've told you with a weight of significance and speak to your families back in the Gambia. Spread the information that the Daft Constitution 2024, produced by the Daft Cabinet, led by the Daft President, is counterproductive. It's not in the interest of the Gambia. It's in the interest of few people. It's in the interest of Adama Barrow only. And Adama Barrow has made it clear from the very minute that he came to power that he's all about serving himself and not serving the nation. Have a very good evening. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bori Bojang. I'll come back again. We'll do a part 2. We'll start from section 72. Thank you.